Doing time in San Quentin prison, the infamous, notorious, legendary San Quentin. Well, first thing I will say, you know you in prison when you in San Quentin, being that it's the oldest prison in California, built in the 1800s. It got that real prison feel, that real prison look with the bars. It's like a castle basically, especially when you compare it to all the modern prisons that's built now, from the Pelican Bays to the Corcorans and the Salinas Valleys. San Quentin really looked like an old fortress, a castle. So now, as far as doing time in Quentin, see, I never really actually did time, quote unquote, meaning I never got endorsed there. So during this time when I was in and out them pens, San Quentin was a reception center before they switched it to DVI. Well, first it was Vacaville, then Quentin, then DVI, back to Quentin, back to DVI, back to Quentin. I don't know where it's at now. But anyway, so when you get off the Grey Goose, coming from county jail, you go through R&R, which is reception. And basically, it's going to be a lot of the lifers and old timers you're going to see there. Not necessarily doing the porter positions, but as far as the process. And remember, keep in mind, the inmates do all the work. So this is another reason why it seems like we know everything as far as certain inmates or whatnot, for the most part. Now, anyway, so they process you. And back then, you had to wear, oh yeah, this is another thing. Being that we in the Bay Area at that time, they didn't trip on the colors as far as the red and blue Crippin' Blood thing, because we up in the Bay Area. So you actually got to keep the shoes you had on when you got arrested. Now, of course, in reception, you can't wear the shoes. Back then, they used to make you wear what we call the carrot suit and the karate shoes. And the OGs called them the jack flaps, the one-piece carrot suit. And I remember at that time, of course, my carrot suit was 3 times big, so I had a big ass carrot suit or whatever. But they let you keep your shoes, of course. But they put that up until you actually get endorsed, meaning which prison you're gonna do the rest of your time. So anyway, you go through all that. Now at this time, you first hit West Block, the notorious West Block. Now I hear nowadays West Block is mainline, and it may even be mixed between S and Y and mainline. I'm not really sure, but at that time and for the longest, West Block was always reception. Now my first time seeing this, another thing. West Block is 2 sides. You got Bay side, you got Yard side. Now, every time I touch Quentin, they always put me on Yard side. I've never actually been on Bay side. And my first time, I think I was on, what was it, 1 West 12 or 1 West 112. Basically on the first tier, not on Broadway, because back then they didn't even have a Broadway on West Block yet. So I was on the first tier. And of course, when you're in reception, you don't got the liberties or freedom as, of course, a mainline convict would have. So you can't really spend too much on Canteen. You got to get what's called fish draw, which is another thing. But basically, again, like I said, if you don't know, I did time in and out these California prisons. I discharged a P number. Now we say a P number because P is a letter, not a number, but in prison you identify by your last two. Now your last two also determines when you can go to the store, canteen. Now depending on numerically whether it's going to be the first week, second week, or third week, I think that's how I go. First draw, second draw, third draw, and fifth draw is when you first get there. So it don't matter what number you is, it's your first time, so you can get on the next canteen, get fish draw. So in I believe my celly was an OG from the bottoms and stuff, and that's where I learned in prison as far as the wheeling and dealing. Being that you in reception, we had access to stuff like the main line, although we in Quentin. So Quentin is kind of like almost a nothing but a county jail for the whole Bay Area in a lot of ways. So it's always gonna be people you know. And it was funny because at that time I happened to see one of my cousins on the tier, because what happened is, doing for the willing and dealing, a lot of cats would of course be out they cell, and they would go to the other side. Like, he was on Bay side, but he would be on Yard side, willing and dealing, and I happened to see him and whatnot. And it's funny because people you ain't seen in a minute, and you wondering where they been, that's where they be a lot of times. Kind of like, hey man, I've been looking for you. Well, you found me. So yeah, Quentin, I learned how to do the fishing line. Like I said, San Quentin is real old prison. So like the prison movies in prison, that look, that's San Quentin. So again, a lot of the prison movies, if you ask me, of course, California politics got the spotlight on as far as the American prison depiction, and a lot of that come from Quentin. So a lot of the old tricks and stuff you may hear about was definitely done in San Quentin. I seen a lot of stuff, learned a lot of stuff in Quentin as far as prison life and doing time, although it was in reception. And another thing, so you usually be in reception maybe 30 to 90 days, depending. And of course, when you go to child, again, you don't, in reception, you don't got that much free time as mainline, like I said. So you basically just go to child and you go to shower. And this is another thing I want to say as far as the showers in the movies and stuff. You don't see cats asshole naked walking around in the shower, okay? We